Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. We start with Turkey, which has accused the Kurdish People's Protection Units of releasing more than 800 ISIS militants in Syria. In a statement, Turkey's defense ministry said NATO needs to realize Ankara is its only partner in Syria fighting ISIS. The defense ministry said Turkey fought alongside NATO and neutralized more than 4,000 ISIS members in Iraq and Syria. Ankara has repeatedly accused Kurdish units of releasing ISIS militants held in local prisons. Last week, President Tayyip Erdogan tried and failed to persuade Washington to cut ties with Kurdish SDF forces. US President Donald Trump has revived his partnership with the SDF after leaving them in the lurch before Turkey's military operation in Syria. The Pentagon has teamed up with the Kurds to occupy Syrian oil reserves in the area, saying they are protecting them from ISIS. Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh says the battle with Israel is not over despite an ongoing ceasefire in Palestine. In a statement, Haniyeh said the group's resistance completely paralyzed Israel during the escalation. The Hamas chief said a new wave of violence in the Gaza Strip is over, but their fight against Israeli atrocities will continue. Last week, Israel killed 34 Palestinians, including a senior Al-Quds Brigade commander, Baha Abu Alata. In response, Hamas fired rockets into Israel. Egypt brokered a ceasefire between the two sides that remains fragile after they fired rockets into each other's territory. As the violent anti-government protests in Iraq continue, protesters have regained control of the third bridge blocking access to Baghdad's Green Zone. The capital's Green Zone houses government ministries and embassies. Security forces used tear gas and stun bombs to prevent protesters from crossing the Ahrar Bridge in central Baghdad. Demonstrators used trash cans and old cabinets to set up barricades on the bridge. In southern Basra, dozens of protesters burned tires and blocked the roads. Demonstrators are now calling for the ouster of Iraq's ruling class and an overhaul of the governance system. Over 300 people have been killed since the start of the mass unrest in Baghdad and southern Iraq in early October. The U.S. has expressed support for the ongoing anti-government protests in Iran. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham says Washington supports Iranians in their peaceful protests. In a statement, Grisham said the U.S. condemns lethal force and communications restrictions against the demonstrators. She accused Tehran of supporting terrorism and inflicting oppression on its own people. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also voiced backing for the demonstrators in Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Abbas Mousavi strongly condemned Washington's support for writers. The demonstrations kicked off across Iran after the government withdrew fuel subsidies, raising gasoline prices. 4 Afghan soldiers have been wounded in a suicide attack close to a military training center in Kabul. The Interior Ministry says the suicide bomber blew himself up in Police District 19. No group has claimed the responsibility yet. Last week, 12 people, including 3 children, were killed and 20 others wounded in a blast elsewhere in Kabul. Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesman Mohammad Faisal questioned India's claims of normalcy in occupied Kashmir. In a series of tweets, Faisal said India's state-sponsored repression cannot suppress the Kashmiri struggle for freedom. Faisal said captured Indian spy Kulbhushan Jadhav is the face of India's terrorism in Pakistan. He said Islamabad will continue to support Kashmiris in their struggle for freedom. The spokesman said India provides state patronage to those who commit crimes against minorities. He added that Pakistan will continue to contribute to promote peace in the region. Pakistan's President Arif Alvi has hit out at a former Indian military general for inciting the rape of Kashmiri women. In a TV debate, retired Major General S.P. Sinha endorsed rape and murder as legitimate military tactics. Sinha said Kashmiri women should be raped by Indians as retribution for the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. In a tweet, Alvi said people should imagine the fate of women in occupied Kashmir, where such men wield power with impunity. Quoting a Human Rights Watch report, Alvi said Indian forces have used rape as a tool in the valley. Former Chief Minister of the Valley, Mehbooba Mufti, also condemned the comment. She said New India is baying for blood and rape. The occupied valley is reeling under a curfew and communications blackout for the last 106 days. A delegation of South Korean Buddhists have visited Lahore Museum to pay respect to relics of Gautam Buddha. The 30-member delegation of Jogya Order, led by leader Van Von Haing, reached Pakistan on Saturday. The Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government says the delegation will also visit holy sites in Taxila, Mardan and Gilgit-Baltistan. It said the delegation will also meet Pakistan's President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan in Islamabad. The visit has been arranged by the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Ministry of Culture and Pakistan's embassy in Seoul. For more on this, we are joined by Sara Sarwar, who is the head of Chancery Pakistan Embassy in Seoul. Thank you for your time, Sara. Please tell us how the pilgrimage was arranged.
Regarding this visit, it has been a very hectic and tiresome job due to the efforts of our embassy and in particular the efforts of our ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Rahim Hayat Qureshi. Due to his untiring efforts, this visit was made possible. And it's not just that due to the efforts of our embassy, but also, if we look at Pakistan now, the situation is very stable there. Security is no more a concern. And that is the reason why visitors and tourists who intend to visit Pakistan, they show ready acceptance to visit Pakistan because of its security environment and because they're pretty much satisfied with it. And also the facilitative atmosphere that is being provided by the government of Pakistan due to its recent initiatives and its particular focus on tourism to bring tourism to Pakistan. This atmosphere, this conducive atmosphere has been able. That is the reason why we have been able to arrange this pilgrimage to Pakistan.
Sara, please tell us about the religious significance of the pilgrimage to Pakistan by South Korean Buddhists.
Buddhist exchange between the two countries is very old. And if we look at this current visit, then, Pakistan is the center of Buddhism. Gandhara, which is now Pakistan, it was the center of Buddhism, and there was once the largest Buddhist population that was living in Pakistan. There are so many historical and archaeological sites that are of considerable value to the Buddhists all over the world, and in particular Korea. We have recently also discovered a sleeping Buddha, that is the oldest statue of sleeping Buddha in Bhamala. And there are so many other living sites. There is a Manthal rock in Gilgit, there's a sacred rock of Hunza, there are so many archaeological sites in Takhtabahi, Mardan, Peshawar, that are so important and significant for these Buddhists that even recently we have seen that there was a Thai monk delegation that visited Pakistan, and there were monks from China who visited Pakistan, and now these Korean monks are visiting Pakistan. So, which shows that Pakistan has been a cradle of civilization, and it has been of significant value for this tourists that are going to Pakistan.
Sarah Sarwar, head of Chancery Pakistan Embassy in Seoul, thank you for talking to Indus News. Now moving on, Islamabad's peace initiative, the Kartarpur corridor, has boosted the number of Sikh pilgrims visiting holy sites in Pakistan. Indian media reported the flow of pilgrims to Kartarpur shrine is picking up on weekends and religious days. According to government data shared by Indian media, 1,800 people are scheduled to visit Kartarpur on Sunday, November the 24th. It said the number is nearly 3 times the 671 people who visited on November the 17th. It said 279 Indians visited on November 13, 241 on November 14, 161 on November 15, and 402 on November the 16th. On the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev on November the 12th, a total of 546 Indians made the trip. Kartarpur Shrine is the last resting place for Sikhism. Founder Baba Guru Nanak in Pakistan opened it as a religious harmony initiative for Sikhs. 8 people have drowned in Pakistan's Okara district after their boat capsized in Satluj River. The local official said at least another 12 are still missing. Witnesses say there were between 20 to 25 people crammed onto the boat. Police say the incident took place in Malu Shekha area of the district. Officials say bodies of 8 people have been recovered, while rescuers are searching for the rest of the missing. They said identities of the deceased are not yet known. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus News. Welcome back. China has called on the US to stop flexing its muscles in the South China Sea and to avoid adding new uncertainties in Taiwan. At a closed-door meeting in Bangkok, China's Defense Minister Wei Fenghe urged his US counterpart Mark Esper to avoid escalating tensions in the region. Earlier, Esper publicly accused Beijing of increasingly resorting to coercion and intimidation to advance its strategic objectives in the region. The exchange came a day after China sailed a carrier group into the sensitive Taiwan Strait, led by its first domestically built aircraft carrier.
On the South China Sea, Minister Wei reaffirmed China's resolute determination to safeguard its territorial sovereignty and its maritime rights and interests in the South China Sea. China's resolute determination to maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea and demands the US stop flexing its muscles in the South China Sea and do not provoke and escalate tensions in the South China Sea.
In Hong Kong, police have stormed the Polytechnic University, which protesters have turned into a stronghold. They responded by throwing petrol bombs and shooting arrows at the police, who fired tear gas and used water cannon. Witnesses say no deaths or serious injuries occurred. Police say it arrested a few protesters and warned everyone in the area can be charged with the rioting. Protesters set up hurdles on campus roads and built barricades. They set university entrances on fire to stop the police from entering and arresting people. President of the university, Tang Jin Guang, has asked protesters to leave the campus, assuring them the police will refrain from using force.
If the protesters do not initiate the use of force, the police will not initiate the use of force. In addition, we have also received permission from the police for you to leave the campus peacefully, and I will personally accompany you to the police station.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong's High Court says a ban on protesters wearing face masks is unconstitutional. Now moving on, the US has urged North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un to act quickly to reach a deal to stop its nuclear program. In a tweet, the President Donald Trump hinted at meeting with Kim but did not specify the date. This follows North Korea's rejection of US offer for fresh talks earlier this week. Yesterday, the US and South Korea postponed military drills in an effort to revive stalled peace talks with North Korea. Pentagon Chief Mark Esper said the step is not a concession, but an effort to enable peace. In Georgia, thousands of people have taken to the streets in Tbilisi to protest against the government and are demanding early elections. The protest comes days after the parliament failed to pass a planned electoral reform bill. The opposition accused President Bidzina Ivanishvili of orchestrating the bill's failure. Protesters said the current system unfairly favors the ruling Georgian Dream Party. They also called for the release of all the political prisoners. Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido has called for a new wave of protests against President Nicolas Maduro. Maduro has held on to power despite an economic crisis and U.S. sanctions. Speaking at a rally in Caracas, Guaido said the opposition should stage frequent protests to boost pressure on Maduro. He said groups including students, teachers and nurses plan to hold protests in the coming days. Guaido won broad international backing in January after declaring Maduro's 2018 re-election a fraud and assuming the interim presidency. But momentum has faded since then as repeated efforts to force Maduro from office have failed. In the past, demonstrations have galvanized the opposition and left the ruling Socialist Party isolated. In Burkina Faso, the army has killed 32 terrorists in 2 operations in the north after an attack on a military patrol. In a statement, the military said 1 soldier was killed during the operations. During the first operation in Loroum province, women held captive by the terrorists as sex slaves were freed. The military also recovered arms and ammunition in the second operation on the outskirts of Bam province. The Burkina Faso army conducted operations less a month after 37 people were killed in an ambush on a convoy. Libya says it has deported 62 illegal immigrants to Chad and Sudan. The Immigration Control Department says the people were returned through the southern borders with Chad and Sudan. The International Organization for Migration says Libya has more than 600,000 illegal immigrants. It says Libya holds 6,000 migrants, including women and children, in detention centers. Thousands of people, mostly Africans, use Libya as a staging point before crossing the Mediterranean Sea to Europe. In Italy, Venice's state of emergency shows no sign of lifting after the city was hit by its 3rd very high tide in a week. The floodwater reached 1.5 meters high. More about Acqua Alta in this report.
Venice's St. Mark's Square is flooded and closed for tourists. Churches, shops and homes have also been inundated. Strong storms and winds have battered the Renaissance city, with storm surges putting it underwater. Since 1872, the 1.5 meter level had never been touched twice in 1 year. Now it has been hit 3 times in a week.
We had lots of damages. For example, in my case, the electrical system went underwater, a lot of merchandise got lost, necklaces and other goods all underwater. We have to lift desks and drawers, rinse again and clean up.
The crisis has prompted the government to release $22 million to tackle the devastation. Many people have blamed the disaster on global warming as well as poor governance.
We had to blame certain politicians of the past. Unfortunately, we pay the consequences. This is the problem.
The local meteorological department says more rain is expected in Venice in the coming week, but tides and weather conditions will ease.
Asian stock markets are trading mixed as investors speculate further developments on the US and China trade talks. China's central bank's key interest rate cut recovered early losses. Despite ongoing political unrest in Hong Kong, Hang Seng is trading more than 1% higher. Shares of Chinese tech giant Tencent jumped over 2%. The Shanghai Composite has gained over 0.5% as China's central bank cut rates on 7-day reverse repurchase agreements to 2.5%. Seoul's Kospi has shed a fraction. Bucking the trend, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 index picked up a fraction after SoftBank Core announced plans to merge Z Holdings with Naver's Line. Time to take a look at the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.